welcome to the first edition of On the Spot with me, Edward Mumbu. Our very first guest who makes history today is none other than Michael Saddam Amushelelo, as he calls himself. Yeah, we just want to dig deeper into the life of the young activist, businessman, politician. We actually just want to understand the paradox that Amushelelo is. We just want to hear it from himself and just get that understanding. Some people are confused actually. They don't know what Amushelelo is. So Michael, welcome to the show, and feel free, talk to us. So maybe to start off with, first of all, just how are you?
No, I'm doing well. Clearly, I've become the guy who's now just making history, so it's good to know that I'm also making history here at New Era with On the Spot. Hopefully this will not be the last interview that we'll be having. But I'm glad that we're now creating newer platforms so that we can be able to engage directly with the end user, so that people can also get to know who are these people that they always see their faces in newspapers. Because half the time someone just sees a picture of you, they read a story, but they do not really know who's this individual that this story is being written about.
Yeah, so who is Michael Amushelelo?
Man, I'm just a passionate young man who basically wants to see a better society. Now, I'm fortunate to have been born in a country called Namibia. And I'm saying I'm fortunate because if we look in terms of the size of our country, we have a very big country and we have a very small population. And to make matters better, we are blessed with a natural abundance of mineral resources. But for some reason, these resources are not being equitably redistributed. Now, what angers me as a young person is that I know for a fact that there's more than enough to cater for every single Namibian. No Namibian should go to bed without having a proper meal. No Namibian is supposed to be living in a makeshift structure. No Namibian is supposed to using the riverbed as a means to utilize when nature calls. And no Namibian should be unemployed in many of these social ills that we're seeing. Now, I feel that this country just needs proper leadership, and once we've got that right leadership in place, I'm sure that this country will be one of the most prosperous countries in the world, given the fact that we have such a small population, we have such a huge amount of land, such huge resources. This country just needs the right people who are in charge of it to make sure that things are freely and equitably done.
Okay, no, we'll get to that at a later stage of our interview. But just talk to us really, you talk to us about your childhood, for instance.
For instance, no, my childhood, I was born in the north. I was born in Onipa. The year was 1991, January the 22nd. So immediately after I was born, my dad, I think at the age of 1 or 2, he then relocated me to Windhoek because he wanted me to have a better opportunity in terms of schooling and all of that. So I lived in Vanaenda. I went to a primary school called Moses van der Bijl, which is in Soweto, Penning Street. After I finished my grade 7, I went to Concordia College, where I went until my grade 12. Grade 12, obviously, I didn't get the required results that I needed for tertiary. I remember getting 24 points in my grade 12 and a G in mathematics, so I did not qualify to go to university. My parents then advised me to go and do some few subjects to upgrade them because they passionately believe that one needs to be a degree holder to make it in this life. And I don't blame them because they come from that era where one needed to be a mitiri, which is a teacher, or you needed to be a nurse in order to basically be recognized by society as to be something. So I did that, and then eventually I upgraded my subjects, and then I applied to go to UNAM to study law. I was not accepted to the law faculty. My second option was media, so I wanted to also do media. I always felt when growing up as a child, I would be a good media personality because I already had a loud mouth, so I figured I could put this loud mouth to good use by making sure I'm able to communicate information and things like that. The same way I used to grow up watching the late John Keddy, the likes of Bolly Muteng, and many other presenters that used to be on NBC, because back in the days, if you didn't have DSTV and your parents didn't have much, NBC was the only option that you had. So watching Afro Connection and Penduka and all those things, I also felt like, man, I can also be able to present a show, because I felt confidence in myself. I think I had the courage to be able to speak in front of a camera. So that's basically who I am, and this is basically how I got here.
Yeah, now, Michael, perhaps if you could, what was the household setting? How did you, I mean, some people really, you find them say, no, I grew up in a dysfunctional home household. How was your setup like? How did you grow up? How were you raised?
Okay, so basically my dad didn't get to marry my mom. So my mom lived in the north. My dad lived in Windhoek. My dad eventually got married to another woman. So I literally grew up in a situation where every holiday I'm at my mom's, and then for schools I'm with my dad. So I was literally between my two parents. So now when I go to the north, I had an opportunity because my grandmother was still alive from my mom's side as well as from my dad's side. So I'd always visit the both of them. Now I realized that most of the wisdom that I now think I perceive to have is from the times I had spent with my grandparents. And they basically molded this fearless person that you guys see today, because they would always encourage me to say that you must stand up for what you believe in, you must stand up for the truth, don't be afraid even if you stand alone, and all those things, to say that sometimes, yes, what you are standing for, most might not be able to support you, despite the fact that it's the truth that you're standing for. But don't wait for others to stand with you with your truth. You stand alone, and others will eventually realize that what you're standing for is correct and is right. So that's basically how I grew up. So between my two parents,
on your father's side, perhaps, what are those morals and principles do you recall that perhaps your father instilled in you?
my father was a military man, so he instilled a lot of discipline in us. And you know how military people are, they literally strict in terms of discipline and things of that sort. So I think part of the reason why I'm a bit disciplined is because of that side of my father. And I say I'm a bit disciplined in the sense that I'm not entirely like my father, because my father was a man used to getting orders. Now, I for one, I'm not used to just being a yes man. I always like to challenge things. I always like to question things. I mean, I remember there was a time when I failed my grade 12. My dad was like, I think you should apply for the army and things like that. But I could clearly already foresee that there's no way I was going to survive in the army, because me and the generals would always be at lockerheads, because they would be saying, no, Amushelelo, you must go do this. And I'll most probably be saying, but why general? And then in the army, there's no whys. You just follow what the orders are being said. So the discipline part I got from that. But my mother was more of an entrepreneur. Growing up, she would always try and find new ways on how to make money. She'll still be employed, but she'll still be having her side businesses, just basically trying to provide for the family and things of that sort. So I think that's where I got my entrepreneurial side of life from my mom, because she is literally a go-getter. She doesn't believe in a no. If she wants to achieve something, she literally doesn't stop until that particular thing is achieved. So I think that's where I get that drive and motivation from. I think that's from my mom's side.
Okay. Now, where does this name Saddam come from?
Now,
is it part of your national documentation?
Yes, so I was born in 1991. And just to give a bit of context in terms of why I'm Saddam. In 1991, Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait. And that was the start of the Gulf War. Now, Saddam was sort of a figure that most of the people in the army looked up to, because Saddam is an army general. Now, I would assume because my dad is also in the army, he felt like, wait, I think I should name my son after Saddam Hussein, because he was very courageous and fearless warrior. So that's where I basically took my name from.
Do you draw any sort of inspiration from the name Saddam?
I mean, you need to admire what the man has done. I mean, the problem with one-sided media stories is that Saddam is often painted as a dictator, a brutal one, and so forth. But the reality is that Saddam wanted to stop using the US dollar and start using the euro instead, to start trading with the oil. Now this becomes detrimental to America because America doesn't have any money, they just print money. Now with this money that they print, they are now able to buy oil and gold and all those things. So if a country such as Iraq, which is at the time, I think it was the third largest producer of oil, crude oil, wants to start saying that we no longer want to accept using your American dollars, we want to start using euros, it could easily lead to other Arab nations as well saying that they will also stop doing that, because Saddam had a lot of influence in the Arab states as well as in OPEC. Now, Saddam needed to be stopped by the Americans. Now, the Americans only knew one way, and that is to start creating propaganda around this guy. We all started hearing that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, which were never found. And obviously, today, Iraq is far much more worse than what it was before. So, unfortunately, I can say that I draw some similarities from him to say that I'm able to stand up to superpowers the same way he was able to stand up to America and its allied forces, NATO and all those other guys. So I could say that yes, perhaps they say a name can be a blessing or a curse, so I think I'm blessed to be called Saddam.
We just hope you don't travel the same route, especially with his demise, of course.
No, it's not demise. Yeah. I'd never call it demise. He died a man. He could have easily fled his country. He could have easily gone and lived in some foreign country. But as a man, he said that he's going to die defending his country. And that's basically what I'm saying as well, to say that I'm going to die defending my country, defending the rights of my people. So I don't think there's anything demise about it.
Let's talk about your life now as an adult. You are married. And in fact, I'm one of those who were shocked that Michael Amushelelo is married, because I think during the arrest, that's when we read reports that your wife was there. I was like, come wait, is Amushelelo married? Because for someone at one point who, with your kind of resources, or perceived resources, if I may put it that way, we expected the traditional, flashy, glamorous weddings, especially from where you come from. Are you married, Chief? What's that?
Yeah, no.
When did you get married? When did you get married? Talk to us about that.
I got married 2021, on the 13th of August. I basically told my girlfriend at the time to say that, hey, I think I want to settle down. Would you like to settle down with me? And she obviously said yes. And then I said, you know what, I'm not much of a person, I love money. So I do not feel the need to feed over 200 or 300 people. And then after feeding all those people, they will still go say there was not enough alcohol, there was not enough meat, there was not enough this, the tent looked shitty, and all those things. So at the end of the day, they'll still criticize you despite the fact that you had spent how much money on this particular wedding. So I said, let's go have something quiet, something silent. And then that's basically what we did. We went to the magistrate court. I went with my 2 witnesses, or my 1 witness each. We got married, we had dinner, and that's about it. Because part of the problem why a lot of marriages, especially young marriages, are failing is because people get into debt trying to show off these nice, massive weddings. And as a result, half of the time, the couples are just arguing about, yeah, but it was you who wanted to have 300 guests. Yeah, but it was you who said each table must have moets. It was you who said each table must have this type of alcohol, this and this. So now, you guys are no longer building yourself as a young couple, but you are now busy, basically, the little money that you're getting, you need to start paying off your debts. And I don't think that any couple should start off their marriage life with debt. And it just becomes financially unwise. And I think a lot of our people need to be educated to say that we need to take this financial literacy thing seriously. That's $500,000 or $1 million that you want to put into a wedding. That's money that you could put aside, do a proper investment, so that you know for a fact that you and your wife, your kids, one day if you do have kids in that relationship or that marriage, are able to be taken care of. But what do we do most of the time, us as black people? We want to squander $1 million in one day, and then we wonder why we black people are generally poor in terms of compared to other races. It's because we do foolish things to just please a few people, and I don't like to be peer pressured, and I don't like to follow what others usually do, because
You want to follow the trend.
I believe I'm a trendsetter, so I don't think I need chandeliers in a tent and all those things. I'd rather have chandeliers in a mansion that I've built, as opposed to just a chandelier that was rented for 10,000 per day in order for me to impress a couple of people. Obviously, our parents didn't understand of this unorthodox methods that I use, because every parent, obviously, it's a sort of a pride thing where you want to brag about it, to say, yes, in my house we had the biggest tent, the whole village were able to feed them and all of that. So unfortunately I deprived my parents of those bragging rights, but I made them understand that I'm an adult and I need to make my own choices and I need to follow my own path.
And you are married and happy.
Precisely.
Yeah, now, do you have kids?
Yes, I have a daughter. She's 6 years old. I do not speak much about her on social media. If you go to my social medias, you're likely not to find out about her. People just recently found out about her because some of these court cases, when we need to battle, then they ask you who are your dependents, then we now need to give birth certificates of our children so that they can see, oh, okay, this person has this and this amount of people dependent on him. So I do not really like to speak about her, because the life I chose already, I knew for a fact that I do not want to bring her into the spotlight, into the limelight. So I'd rather her grow up as a normal child, like all normal kids, as opposed to me being there, putting her every day on social media and exposing her to all sorts of things that I do not know what I'll be exposing to her. Because there's a flip side to social media. There's those people who are there, they are happy for you, they are liking there, but at the same time there are those people who are not happy that you have a child and all of those things. So that's why I'd rather not post much about her or speak much about her in public.
Welcome back to On The Spot. My guest is none other than Michael Amushelelo. Now, Amushe, as we call you in the streets.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about your business empire, if I may put it that way. What was your first business idea?
Man, so the first business, or let me say how I got into entrepreneurship. While I was in primary school, my dad was deployed to Germany. I'm not quite sure what he went to do in Germany. Never really asked him. But I think he got deployed there by the army or so. So when he came back from Germany, he bought a toaster. Now, when he bought this toaster, we then started making toast bread. And then we'd make toast bread and then take it to school with. Now, eventually, as I would take my toast bread to school, the other kids were fascinated by this nice sandwich that looked so delicious. And they were like, where do you get this? And I'm like, no, I get it at home. And then the one kid offered me actually $1 to buy my one sandwich. And then I gave it to him. And then the following day, he was like, can I buy again another one? Because yesterday I liked it. And then that's where I realized, oh, there's an opportunity for me here to actually start making bread and coming to sell it at school. So that's how I first sort of got into this entrepreneurship thing. Now, eventually I went to high school. In high school, I started selling lollipops. So my mom had bought a packet of Stockies, and then I basically started selling them at school. And then at school, I was popularly known as Stocky, and then, or sometimes Lollipop, or whatever the case is, that's how they would call me. And then I used to basically trade with lollipops and Stockies. So after high school, when I failed my grade 12, that year while I was busy doing the upgrading of my subjects, I then started a cleaning company. I called it MCA, Micro Cleaning Agency, where I basically started cleaning people's yachts. And then I started making an income from that. And then with that income, I could then support myself to pay for taxi fare, or basically to buy my cosmetics and things of that sort. Because I already sort of understood that in life, you cannot be financially dependent on the next person. And that is why I basically started doing all of this. Eventually, I opened up what I called Michael Mini Shop, which was basically a shop at home where I was selling rations, hot dogs, cool drinks, recharge vouchers, and all the small things that I needed, those daily needs that I needed at home. Now, eventually, I realized that the airtime business was doing very well, because at the time we didn't have this luxury of getting free SMSs and all of these things. So it meant that if you needed to SMS someone, you must make sure you type a whole paragraph. This thing where you just now type a K and then you send, it was unheard of that time. That time you make sure the whole story is in and then you send. So the airtime business was doing well, but I realized that I needed to get a good location in order for me to, that is traffic or volumes. So I went to, because I live in Banaanda, I then started selling at Banaanda bus stop, my recharge vouchers. But one thing I noticed at that time is that most of the street vendors were Zimbabweans, especially the ones selling sweets, especially the ones selling recharges and all of these things. They were mostly Zimbabwean vendors. So people, when they would walk past me, they always assumed I was Zimbabweans. I was a Zimbabwean. But then when I speak my native language, which is Shwambo, then they'll be shocked to say, oh, these Zimbabweans also now speak our language.
Yeah.
So they just assumed that I was a Zimbabwean the whole time, because for some reason we Namibians had perceived that the selling of brooms, the selling of mops is only reserved for foreigners. And at the time, many of us were unemployed and all those things, but would have rather opted to be at home doing nothing, as opposed to going out there and then basically taking up some of the spaces and opportunities that are there in life. And I felt like this was very odd, because why are we so shy, or what is it that's hindering us Namibians from actually being on the streets like our fellow Zimbabwean brothers and basically selling things on the street?
Okay. Now, let's discuss the forex, the whole forex business, because it is during your forex trading that that really attention was now on you, and in the advent of obviously social media, you now, people could speak to you. You had clips going viral where you were sometimes promising these returns when people invested in this business. So just talk to us about the whole forex business and the whole idea behind it.
So forex is not an idea. It's a market that actually exists, and it's one of the biggest lucrative markets in the world. Now, the forex market dwarfs the stock markets. Stock markets, you most probably have around 1 trillion or 2 trillion running on the stock markets. Now, with the forex market, you have about 7, now almost 8 trillion on a daily basis that is running on this market. Now, what that simply means is to say that it's a market where currencies, especially major currencies of major big economies, are basically trading. You've got your US dollars, you've got your British pounds, and then you can continue naming them. Now, these currencies basically compete with one another to see which one is stronger against the other. Now, you then, as a forex trader, you then decide to say, based on analysis of trends and charts, you then decide, are you either going to buy or you're going to sell? Those are the only two things that happen in the forex market. There are no in-betweens. If you are in between, then that means you're not either making money, neither you're losing money. So if the market, let's say, is going up, then that means it's a perfect opportunity for you to buy. And then as you buy and the market is going up, then you are able to make money. Now, similar to when the market is going down and you sell, then you also make money from that. Now, the beauty with the Forex market is that you are now earning money in foreign exchange. The accounts, usually when you open an account, you have an option to say you want it in Japanese yen, you want it in US dollars, you want it in pounds, or whichever currency that is available that you want. Now let's assume then my account is in British pounds and I just make £100 on the foreign market. When I bring it to Namibia, or when I withdraw my money from the market and the money is cleared into my bank account, I no longer just have £100. It's multiplied by whatever the currency exchange is. So let's assume the currency exchange is at £20. That simply means that I've now made $2,000. So when I now make $1,000 or £1,000 on the market, you multiply it again by 20. So it was that multiplying factor that coupled me to easily become a multi-millionaire. Now the problem with money is that it's like a pregnant woman. You can't hide it. Everyone can see it. Because number one, you start living better. Number two, you start living a more comfortable life than most people. And you just start also glowing, man. There's that thing where people are like, man, Chief, you look like money. It's because you have money. It's not just you. It's not a coincidence. I have money. I don't look like money. I am money. So eventually, what we then started doing is that a lot of people started approaching us to say that, Chief, we also want to learn what is this thing. Now, before that, we started with the Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, I'm sure if you go back, there were articles written where me and the Bank of Namibia had clashed, where they'd even frozen my accounts prior to the Forex, saying that Bitcoin is illegal and all these cryptocurrencies and all this shenanigans, because cryptocurrencies had emerged and most of the central banks did not understand this because their system is based on fiat currency. Now, fiat currency is basically paper money. Now, when these digital currencies then started emerging, most of them were fearful to say that what is going to happen to the real money and all these things. So Bank of Namibia immediately jumped on the bandwagon of saying these things are illegal and we do not accept cryptocurrencies, and up until now they're still not clear on what position they are. So I said, okay, fine, let me not get into trouble with the regulators for cryptocurrencies, let's focus on Forex. We went to them, we had meetings, they didn't have an issue with it, we had presented to them, we even have minutes of those meetings that we had with them, and they were like, no, it's fine, you guys can do whatever it is that you are doing, we don't have an issue with that. So we then started offering Forex classes. This is basically to give you the skills, because I always believe in the philosophy of teach a man how to fish so that when you're no longer there, he can at least rely on his skills to be able to fish for himself. And that's what we started doing. The younger kids caught on very fast because it's basically you can trade from your laptop, from your phone. So due to the fact that they were tech savvy, they were able to immediately be able to catch up with this Forex trading. Now, our older generation, they couldn't catch up very fast with these things because the market is not just about analyzing the charts. You must be able to read the news. Let's say, for example, the federal chairman today says that there's going to be an announcement of the repo rates or things of that sort. Immediately, the markets already start shivering to say in which direction are the repo rates going to go. And this is now the United States. Now, remember, when America somehow sneezes or anything happens there, it affects all the global markets because America is sort of, it's still the biggest economy after China. So whatever happens there affects the global markets. Similar to if China says they're going to start throwing missiles to Taiwan or anything of that sort, the markets also react based on that type of news. So you then need to analyze all of this information before you place your trades. Now, for our old people, they were finding it a bit difficult to be doing all this analysis because now they must focus on what is the news saying, they must focus on what the markets are saying, and it became a bit confusing for them, and they were like, my son, can I not just give you my 500 and then when you are trading you just put it into your account, and then when you make money you give me a particular my cut. So that's what we then started doing.
But then the bank started, one of the issues is it more or less looked like a pyramid scheme or something.
In that same period when I was doing Forex trading, I'd also gone into politics. I tried to convince my fellow young people to come together so that we can basically form our own political party for young people.
That's when you formed Power.
That's when I formed Power. Now, you remember with Power, I was pushing it massively. And just before that, we started it in 2018 with the hopes of taking part in the 2019 elections. Now, one of those famous viral clips that you're speaking about was the one when I was in Dubai. When I basically, after Dimbrukeni Noyoma was arrested, I think he was trying to assist a lady at some shack, and then he got arrested, and then I heard news of that while I was in Dubai. And then I was on the toilet pot, and then I started saying how Hage is an educated fool and all of that. So that is basically where I sort of started rubbing shoulders wrongly with the so-called superpowers or the top dogs or whatever they try to call themselves. So immediately when I got back to the country, I had already received to say, yeah, you are just talking too much because you are in Dubai, you don't have courage, you are just like many of these people who ran away to foreign countries for better opportunities. So most people had thought I'd actually run away and I relocated to Dubai. I was like, no, Dubai I just went for my birthday because it was one of my lifelong dreams to say that I'm born in January, so during this month where people always say they are broke, I'm going to show them that in a broke month, I'm going to Dubai and buy. So that's when I decided to do that.
Okay, now Amushelelo, one of the things is, I mean, of course I ask this being very cognizant of the fact that some of these matters are sub judice.
Sub judice, you see, the thing about me is that most people say we have no respect for the judicial system or anything of that sort, but I feel that some of these things, it's almost like us discussing the fish rod method.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it's before court, we are still, it does not stop us from discussing it in depth and in detail. Yeah. So I do not know why things of this sort apparently cannot be discussed in public when they are currently happening in court. So I do not understand why is it always a thing of this sub judice and all these things.
Now, one of some of the charges that you are facing include tax evasion, for example. And as you know, taxes are it's from taxes that the government or the state generates revenue to provide some of these services that you are also on the other side fighting for. So how do you balance that? Is it perhaps a trumped up charge?
You see, here's the thing.
Yeah.
If you had looked at the initial charges that government had charged us with, there were only about 4 charges, which was mainly, in fact, only 2 charges. It was only money laundering and fraud. That's about it. Then they took almost 6 months to then come up with again this, because they realized, okay, here we might not be able to get him on the money laundering and the fraud. So maybe let's try and get another avenue. Let's find tax evasion and all these things.
It's like 300 or so charges.
Now, the 365 charges, just to explain to you why there are 365 charges, they literally took all the clients that were willing to testify against me and then said, are you willing to testify against Amushelelo? They basically, the police coerced these people to say that if you testify against him, you'll be able to get your money. So that is how most of these people then ended up becoming sort of witnesses for the state in order for them to ramp up these 365 charges. Now, the government in any case wants to have as many charges as possible, because remember, they just need to get you on one charge, irregardless of whether the other 364 charges were baseless. If they get you on one, then obviously they still can be able to lock you up. So it's like them casting a net as wide as possible so that they can basically be able to see they catch something. But like I've stated before, these are bogus charges. The state is clearly scared. I'm not quite sure what they're afraid of. I mean, part of the reason why they froze their assets is because they realized that these resources were the means for us to start mobilizing and basically start doing a lot of critical things in our societies. So they felt that if we can cut back on his resources, maybe we'll be able to slow him down and also just silence him for good. Because remember, government doesn't like opposition that has real threat. And when we speak about real threat, we are speaking about you being able to do tangible things. Now, most people just do the talk. Some of us are able to do the work. Now, let's say, for example, some of the things that we're busy with.
No, we'll get there.
Okay.
I know where you want to head to. But one of the things that the state is arguing is that you are unable to pay back the depositors. Let's say if all your depositors came back, stood up one day and said, okay, Amushelelo, we want our money back that we invested in your business. You are unable to refund them. That's the argument.
That's the argument.
Yeah, and then which is a characteristic of a Ponzi scheme.
Okay.
Because if you are unable to pay back your depositors, if they decided that no, we want our money, then what? That's one of the.
That's the argument. Now that argument falls.
Are you able to?
I'm able to pay back all my clients.
Okay.
Now that argument falls flat in their face, because what they need to understand is that you can never keep all the money in the bank account. The money needs to be trading. Remember, we're getting money from clients. This money is now on the market in order for you to be able to generate the return that you're promising your client. Now, we just keep enough money to pay out the clients that are due for payouts. Now, it will be stupid and unwise for you to keep all your clients' money in the bank, knowing for a fact that at the end of the day, when this person's contract matures, they are obviously expecting a payout from you. Now, how will you be able to pay this person out if the bank does not even give you an interest on the money that they are currently holding there? Remember, we are promising returns of up to 50%, and that's in a 2-month basis, which is unheard of. Now, banks for years have been able to rip off our people because they tell you to say, you know what, Edward, give me your 10,000, put it in a 32-day account, let me keep it for you, safe for a year. But guess what the bank does? The bank takes that same exact money and they start doing the same thing I do. And they do it on a bigger and larger commercial scale. So you can clearly see that the commercial banks in cahoots with the Bank of Namibia as well as some few politicians orchestrated this whole thing, because let's look at it this way. Shimi was the bank governor at the time that I was arrested. Shivute was also in the banking sector at Bank of Namibia. So all these guys, after the Gavachap and all these guys, eventually when they say, if you can deliver for us this young man, I can promise you I'll sort you out. And all these people are now being sorted out. And they've been sorted out by the regime. So the regime obviously does not want the system to be disturbed. Remember,
Are you still trading?
Am I still trading?
In terms of Forex?
No, I've stopped trading because unfortunately I do not have access to my bank accounts. But should I get access to my bank accounts today, I'll immediately start trading. I mean, lithium is a good commodity right now to trade with. There's another commodity called palladium. It's one of the most expensive minerals as we currently speak. So there's actually a lot of opportunity in the market for me right now, but I'm losing out on this opportunity because I now need to be dilly-dallying with this Mickey Mouse regimes that basically do not want our people to become economically liberated.
Now, before we go on a break, let's talk about property group Safe Namibia. Yeah, the estate,
housing, yes.
the housing project that
Yes.
you are working on, of course, with Ndibulukeni Nauyoma.
Yes.
What is the update on that? What is latest? Because the last time we engaged, of
Yes.
course, you were at the time you guys were locked up and all that. What's latest?
The latest is that we're done with our township establishment. We have given it in to the city of Bento. Now we all know what the current issues are at the city of Bento. Now this thing needs to be approved by the management of council and eventually by council and all those things. Now currently, as we're speaking, since December, There's been no MC, so meaning that there's no management council to be able to, for some of our matters to be tabled in order for the township to be approved so that we can start carrying on with our development. So we are ready to literally kick off, but as per usual, is the bureaucracy in this country. So the bureaucracy is what kills a lot of projects. The bureaucracy is what kills a lot of opportunities for young people. So I think we seriously need to have a real look at how things are done in this country, because I honestly feel that we are not serious in terms of how things are done, because some of these processes are not supposed to be taking this long.
But also, Amushe, when you speak about the current state of affairs, you are now drawing our attention to the city of Windhoek, which is currently dominated by opposition parties. We have 10 councillors out of the 15 that are from various political formations that form part of the country's opposition. So is it then fair to say the opposition is failing Namibians, you included?
Myself, I cannot be included because I'm not part of the
PGSN, you are saying you have submitted your
township,
and now currently there's no management,
precisely.
The municipality finds itself.
So clearly, I mean, it's sad to see that these guys also just wanted a seat at the table so that they can also just eat. Because many of them, it's like they've lost their moral compass, they've lost their conscience. I mean, we have an organization that used to fight for land. Now all we see is trips to reggae countries, and you don't see anything tangible being done to restore the dignity of the people, as they would say. You've got two parties there actually. One is the landless, that is literally saying, in its name, it's saying that they want to make sure that people have land so that they cannot be landless. The other one is the affirmative reposition, and clearly these organizations, they are failing to come up and meet their mandate and their core objectives that they were literally designed for, including the others who now obviously you can see that it's a thing of, let me pat your back, you become mayor for this year so that you can have a nice Mercedes-Benz that drives you home, and then you the following year will also make sure you become mayor so that you can have housing allowance, pay off your house or whatever, your car. So you can clearly see that there's absolute zero interest in those councillors to solve the issues of the people. And it would be safe to say, when the people say that SWAPO was better, at least under the SWAPO regime, people were receiving services and things of that sort. And it is similar to what our old people are saying, the Boers were better. So unfortunately, when people who are entrusted and you have given people your assurances and hope fail to do something particular, then you start to actually believe that the other devil was better than the current one.
You sound quite pessimistic. You know, basically it's just the current state of the affairs in the city of Windhoek, and when opposition parties are the ones that are actually dominating.
I think the problem is that everyone wants to take credit, and it's similar to the recent World Cup that we saw, where Mbappe was single-handedly trying to win the World Cup for France, but the rest of his teammates were not giving the same effort as Mbappe did. Now, unfortunately, people must realize that individuals cannot win trophies or championships. It takes a collective and teamwork. Right now, it's more of people want to be saying that it was LPM-led mayor that delivered these services, or it was an AR mayor that delivered these particular services, or it was a Nudo mayor that delivered these particular services, as opposed to it being a collective called the city of Windhoek. So now it's more of egos, and it's more of political structures, as opposed to them really fighting issues for the common purpose of the masses that they promised and vowed that they are going to deliver services for.
But I mean, you also have a platform, and I would like to believe you are one of the influential, if I may put it that way, politicians, if I may also put it that way. Have you reached out to your colleagues at the city? Just to say, no, colleagues,
I mean,
this chaos, this mess.
I mean, the problem is that ever since some people ascended to the top, I think for some reason people maybe get amnesia or something of the sort. Some of these colleagues, when you call them, you assume maybe it's because they've got new iPhone gadgets that they do not have your number. You leave a message to say it's who's calling, but they do not respond back to your calls. So you can clearly see that these guys, once they reach a certain level, they no longer have an interest with those of you who are not in the corridors of power. So they feel to say that because we are not part of those corridors where power is being discussed, we can no longer give our inputs and suggestions for them to, because they, you know, someone once told me that people who are often at a place where you are not, they are very difficult for you to advise them, because the first thing you would ask you is that, have you ever been in this position that I am? So where then are you getting the wisdom and the courage to tell me or to advise me to say this is what I must do and so forth? So I think that's also part of the reason why some of these people were not able to reach out to them and give them our ideas.
Now you are a full-blown activist. I don't know, are you an activist or are you a politician? How do you, in which category do you fall actually?
Man, I would not like to fall in the category of politicians, because I think the name politicians over the years has lost its generic value, because now it's more politics of the belly than as opposed to be politics of changing the lives of the masses. So I would like to de-associate with myself being called a politician, because these are guys who make empty promises, they don't deliver on anything, zero accountability, zero action on their part. So I would not like to distinguish myself as a politician or an activist, but I'd rather distinguish myself as a leader. And this is what leaders do. Leaders give guidance, leaders show the direction in terms of things the way they're supposed to do. Leaders influence society in a positive way so that things can positively be changed. So I think what this country needs is leadership. Let's do away with politicians, let's do away with all these other things, but I think what we need right now as a country is leadership.
Now, you are an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. You see business opportunities when others see the end of the road. Some of your critics see you entering this political domain as another opportunity that you've seen, or another loophole for you to possibly also make money. Some people are saying you are actually looking at 2024. You want to go to parliament. Okay, can you just respond to that?
Parliament, what's the salary for a parliamentarian? 51,000, 52,000? That's money I can make in 2-3 days. So I don't need the salary in parliament. In fact, I've stated it several times to say that should I ever find myself in parliament, I need people to hold me account that I do not need that salary. That salary can be donated to an orphan age, it can go to building a school or renovating, but I do not need salary. What I need and want to do is basically change the landscape of this country. Now, it must be worrisome if dentists are trying to become presidents, if entrepreneurs are entering this landscape of politics. Very soon we'll see cleaners, gardeners, nurses, and even journalists maybe entering this politics, because they can clearly see there is a leadership vacuum and there's a leadership crisis in this country. What we're seeing is a crisis, and someone needs to respond to this crisis. Whether now it's me, whether it's going to be you, but someone needs to realize that this country is on autopilot. The pilot is currently sleeping. Someone must take charge of the plane, because remember, there is only a certain amount of fuel, and that plane cannot continue being in the sky just flying up and down. It needs to be brought down to the ground. We must re-strategize, replan, refuel, and be able to take off so that this country can be taken to a better destination.
Now the issue, the Chinatown demonstration and that led to your subsequent arrest. was it misplaced anger on your part that led you to this demonstration? Because after that, Namra came up with a counter sort of narrative that you were actually wrong to shut down these shops because you didn't have an understanding of what a fake product is, what a counterfeit product is. Is it something that when you look back, you reflect and say, but maybe you guys were wrong?
Absolutely not. I mean, here's the thing. You cannot say that the Order with Me generation is selling fake counterfeit products, while we know for a fact that the mother and father of fake products is right there in Chinatown. So if you want to deal with a particular problem, you don't go to the secondary source. You go to the primary source. Where is the primary source? Chinatown. So if there was truly an initiative and a push by Namra and Sem Shivute in particular to make sure that there are no counterfeit products sold in this country, they would have first started with Chinatown, and then from there on, the smaller guys already immediately, by the virtue that you have cut off the head, the smaller guys would immediately start to retrieve and say,
but then
we are no longer going to start selling.
Namra's argument, if one can look at it closely,
obviously
is that the goods at Chinatown perhaps may be of low quality, but they are not counterfeit.
No. You can go there now, you'll find counterfeit products in Chinatown. And I can ascertain you, we can take this camera, we can take our cameraman, and then we can go there and ascertain ourselves if there are no fake products being sold. So Namra obviously was caught, it's like a deer caught in the light. They had absolutely no way how to spin this PR thing. And that's why for the first time I started hearing Sem Shivute is the one himself going around doing this talk shows and all of these things. So you can clearly see that they needed to do a lot of PR work to undo the damage that they have done, because it is unjustifiable in a country where we have over 1.2 million unemployed young people that those who are trying to earn a living are now being oppressed by the very same government that promised to uplift our people who were once oppressed. So what are we saying? Are we saying a Chinese is of more value than a Namibian?
No, but also when Namra issued that statement to say, no, we destroyed counterfeit goods worth
5 million.
Over 5 million.
Yes.
They never revealed the nationalities of those from whom they confiscated this good. Let's hypothetically say, what if these counterfeit products were actually confiscated from the Chinese? Just for argument's sake.
Okay, but for argument's sake, we had received a lot of arguments from young people saying that, yes, my goods have been confiscated, all of this. You read the social media reports yourself. I've got inboxes and DMs from young people of this Order with Me generation that personally complained to me to say that my goods are part of those things that were banned. So I was not ill-placed to say that I need to stand up for my fellow Namibians who seem not to have a voice and who seem not to be listened to. But thanks to those interventions, you can clearly see that Namra has now started going out, explaining to the people how things must be done. They are having stakeholder engagements. And this is what is supposed to be happening in a country where we're supposed to be engaging one another and saying, colleague, this that you are doing is wrong. Perhaps you can do it in this way. And this is the only way that we'll be able to make sure that frictions of this sort are sorted out. And
then I think our Chinese ambassador, the Namibian ambassador to China, Mr. Kayamo, was also part of one of the engagements where he was also just making it clear that sometimes, he said, this generation is of Zula boys.
Yes.
And these people must survive.
Yes.
So the country's laws must now speak to the reality,
exactly.
to the reality on the ground. Now, you have entered the space of, let's say, workers' rights. There seems to be a void when it comes to the work of the unions. I mean, it's the only way that you could become relevant in that space.
Not just the union, it's the Ministry of Labor. Remember, we've got labor inspectors. These are people who are supposed to ascertain that labor practices in workplaces are adhered to and all of that. But clearly you can see over the years, most of this inspectors are either bribed as all the way up to top officials. Things are just being done in a, you'd most likely categorize it as a systematic corruption. Now the unions are even much more worse, because the same unions that are sort of supposed to be defending the workers' rights, some of these unions now also end up having shares, or one of their SGs are actually shareholders in some of these companies. So now they become conflicted in terms of what it is that they need to do. Now, I've explained this before, and I've explained it in this manner. If you now go to the hospital and the doctor is refusing to attend to a visible wound where you are bleeding, and you go to the nurse, and the nurse is also just blatantly refusing to assist you, then the cleaner who's busy cleaning the floor sees that you are bleeding, takes a bandage and tries to sort of assist you. Whose fault is it? Is it the fault of the cleaner, or is it the fault of the doctor and the nurse who are supposed to be doing their work?
So you are the cleaner now?
Now I'm the cleaner. I need to be cleaning up this mess that the unions and the Ministry of Labor has created. That's why the other engagement that I had with Utoni Nuyoma, when we went to go sit him down to say these are the issues to present to him, the facts on the ground. Instead of him trying to listen to us, he was there trying to discipline us to say, you must call your so-called revolutionaries to order. Now, he knows for a fact that the so-called revolutionary that he's speaking about is me. Now, I was wondering as to why he needs to address me in a manner as if I'm not in the meeting. So, it was cowardice on his part. Instead of saying, Amushelelo, you must stop with your so-called revolutionary. So that is when I said to him that, Minister, but you are useless. And he's very useless for that matter.
Okay, now Amushe, the relevance of the youth league, or the youth leagues across the spectrum, is it something that worries you? Because there's a feeling generally that political parties, especially their youth leagues, are absent on the scene as far as youth matters are concerned. Of course, there are exceptions, but generally, what's your take? Because somebody was saying perhaps maybe Amushelelo has also replaced some of the youth leagues in the country.
Man, we must speak, and I'm going to be very generic to say that the youth of today is the hubbly bubbly generation, is the hookah generation, is the entertainment generation. They have absolute zero interest in the affairs of this country. I mean, if you look at how they are able to fill up stadiums when there are entertainment things and all of these things, they flock into their numbers. But when serious issues arise, where they are now supposed to be at the center front and saying, let us see how these things can be addressed, they have absolute zero interest. So the current youth is keyboard courage youth. Would rather bash each other on Twitter, would rather troll each other on Twitter, would rather comment the whole day on Twitter, but we are not really that type of youth that can stand up and be vibrant and youthful in terms of making sure that our ideologies are ahead, our aspirations are ahead, and things of that sort. And that is why I feel very sad to say that this country is at a point where it's degenerating, and the youth of this country are absolutely just seated back, comfortable, and they don't care whether this country sinks or whether this country collapses, because to them, those things are not an interest to them. But if it has to do with alcohol, if it has to do with entertainment, we are number one day. But if it has to do with the generic condition of our country and making sure that we hold our leaders accountable, there's nothing that we do about it. Who suffers the most? Young people are the ones suffering the most. Recently, I had led the demonstrations for registration fees to fall, but the students themselves failed to turn up in masses in order for these registration fees to either be reduced or for them to be completely done away with. Now, if you are trying to assist someone and they clearly do not want that assistance, what do? I think it's best you move on and then you see who else are you able to assist.
Now that you're bringing up that element, I remember towards the end of last year, there was a recording that you did.
Yes.
Where you were saying, no, I'm retiring from this whole activism thing. These people are useless.
Yes.
You are trying to help them. They are not even willing to be helped.
Precisely.
What changed?
So what triggered my comeback was, I think last month, I was called by employees of Total Riverside. It's a service station in Eros. And they complained to me to say that they have not been paid the whole of December. Now, as a husband and as a father, I then asked myself to say that, how would I feel that I worked the whole of December, but I was unable to have money for Christmas, to spend, to buy at least a chicken or have food or buy my child new clothes. And this was now January the 9th or the 10th. And how am I even going to buy my child's school uniform or pay for these textbooks and all of these things? So that empathetic side of me then kicked in and said to say that, would you deny this person the call if I was in their shoes? So I literally put myself in their shoes to say that if I was this person and I'm calling on someone who I know has a voice and has the potential to be able to solve my problem, will I say yes or will I say no? So I said to myself yes, and that is why I went to go assist them. Now, you know already my line of work is that I always use my social media so that people can be able to see what is going on and just to give an update to the nation. So other people saw, oh, the guy is back. So eventually the calls just kept coming and coming and coming. And when you hear these stories, some of them, they are very sad. And my conscience when I go to bed doesn't allow me to sleep because I knew I could have done something to assist someone, but because of my own selfish needs, I chose not to assist those people. So that is why I'm constantly putting my life at risk. I'm constantly putting myself in harm's way, and sometimes we need to face jail time. I recently spent the weekend in custody in Walvis Bay for leading the protest where a young girl by the name of Fabiola had killed herself who was working for ShopRite. And you know, some of these things, it takes an emotional toll on you because these are real life people and these are real life issues. And the families, the colleagues, you can feel the anguish, you can feel the pain. So I think a lot needs to be done in terms of labor matters in this country, and also just in general the issues that this country is facing. And that's why I'm saying that we need serious leadership. I mean, we can say what we want to say, but most of us have been hearing positive things coming from Zambia. And that is because we are now seeing that Zambia is sort of having a leader who cares about the people and who obviously wants to the best for his people. And that is why most Zambians today, if you call them, they are very happy, they are very joyful. It's because they are seeing tangible changes to their communities and to their societies. And that is what we need in this country. We need a leader who is able to uplift the spirits of the people, who is able to bring back the hope of the people, so that the people's dreams are ignited again. Right now, Namibians don't dream anymore. We all just go to bed and then we sleep because the car installment is bothering you, the home loan is bothering you because Gavakap is constantly increasing the repo rate. So these are the things that keep us up at night.
Now, the issue of prison, just briefly.
Yes.
You spending a night in prison, and I think you spent over 3 months also in prison behind bars. What goes through your mind? Does it weigh you down? Does it discourage you to stop fighting for whatever cause it is that you are fighting, or perhaps it is something that fortifies your vigor, sort of, to continue?
I mean, the thing is, if it's anything, once you've been imprisoned, it's like these guys are just sharpening you. You know, they say if you want to strengthen an iron, you need to put it in fire. So the more they put me in this fire, the stronger I become. So that is why I think now with the recent issue of me pushing for the arrest of Shikongo, we've now had some credible intelligence that they now literally want to write me off because they think that prison is no longer a mechanism to stop me. Because if you look in terms of how I address some of the issues, we address them in a very robust and radical manner. And our police, many of them have not perhaps dealt with some of these things. And that's why you would see recently I was in Karas, not Karas but in Ketmans, and the Karas regional commander, I simply told him to say that we know where some of these police officers live. And immediately he says that is a threat. I'm saying, Chief, how can me saying we know where some of these police officers live be considered a threat? That's freedom of speech. And I was telling them to say, Commander, relax. I'm the one who's in charge here. You can't tell us how to run our programs. So clearly, I've become a nuisance to the police because most of my dilly-dallings are with the police. And for some reason, I feel that the police have now perhaps become the new custodians of the Ministry of Labor, because whenever there are labor disputes, you will be shocked at the amount of police officers that are sent to come and address the labor matter. So perhaps Gengop has not informed us that Shikongo is now in charge of labor affairs. Perhaps he's still going to make that pronouncement. I think maybe he was on holiday, but perhaps he'll soon pronounce what the role of the police is.
While you deal with your relationship with the affirmative repositioning movement, of course, over the years following you around and covering as a reporter, we've seen that those close links of yourself with the AR movement. But of recent, what happened? Two, why the Namibia Economic Freedom Fighters? Why did you join the NEFF?
Okay, so
deal with AR first.
Okay, so with AR, the ideology has always sat right with me. And that is obviously to restore the dignity of our people and to make sure that the land is given back to our people. That's a cause that I would resonate with on any given day. However, over the years, I've financially supported the movement. I've pumped in a lot of money. And the idea was to make sure that young people come together and we have our movement where we can basically be able to address issues. But when you realize that the movement is just for certain individuals, you now feel that you no longer feel welcome, because I wanted to contribute in terms of not just monetary but to also be at the forefront, but they felt to say that no, you are not good enough, because they only saw my business acumen side of things, so they just thought I would just be a financier. But I said no, I would like to be part of the day-to-day things and see how best we can. So unfortunately, they did not realize that I had the potential to actually be good in terms of doing some of these things. So that is when I realized that at any point you need to be able to cut relationships and move on. So that is why then I started then seeing where else, which new outfit would I possibly be able to fit in, what ideologies do they have, and where would I be able to resonate with them. Now, due to my radical nature, I cannot belong to some of these many political parties, because by now, from my first arrest, you'd already seen suspension letters to say that we now distance ourselves from this particular patriot or this particular commissar or this particular comrade. He is no longer a part of us. We distance his actions and all of these things, because remember, most of these political outfits like to be seen as politically correct and all of these things. So I would never be able to fit in it. So I needed to find a movement that is radical, that is robust, that obviously wants to address the plight of our masses.
But when you speak about radical and robust in the NEFF, especially the NEFF here in Namibia, would you say they were that which you are referring to as robust?
No, they were not as such, but I knew for a fact that because I knew for a fact that I would be able to fit in there, because the ideology is already suited for us. Because our ideology is rooted in socialism. And socialism is basically some of the things that I've also been pushing through with power. So I then said to say that it doesn't make sense now for me to try and revive power.
So what you are saying is you were the missing person within the...
Precisely.
Okay. Now the NEFF itself also has its own issues, especially when it comes to leadership. I mean, they've not had a Congress since they were founded in 2014, which of course also brings the legitimacy of the current leadership into question. Is it something that you've perhaps raised with your leadership?
I've definitely raised that, and that is why part of the reason why I've come in is to say that we need to mobilize young people, because we need to have what is called the People's Assembly. Now, the People's Assembly can only take place if we have proper structures. Now, for the past few years, obviously, the movement has not grown to its capacity as would have ought to have wanted it, and that is why sometimes any organization would need injection in terms of influence and all of these things to make it basically popular. Because remember, politics is about popularity. He who is the most popular becomes the most voted. Right now, the ruling party is the most popular political outfit in this country. Now, when people go to elections, the first name already on anyone's mind is the current ruling party. Now, how do we dominate that popularity space as well? And that is why I needed to make sure that when we come in, we do actual work that changes the lives of the people. Because we must do away with this politics of just promising people that we are going to come and assist them in 2025 when we have assumed office. No, politics should be about you as a leader getting up, being in the forefront, facing the rubber bullets, facing the tear gas, facing the arrest, to ensure that the livelihoods of your people get changed. And not just this politics of issuing statements, press conferences with reporters to drink water, have some biscuits and tea, be in parliament the whole day just accepting iPhones and laptops and all of these things. But it should be about changing the lives of our people, because that is what politics is.
Michael Amushelelo, do you fear for your life?
Absolutely not. The day I was born to die. So those who live in the fear of losing their lives are already in prison, and unfortunately I'm not a prisoner of my mind, and I have accepted that the only thing that we are all guaranteed is that we are going to die. So why not make peace? So I do not know why there is such a big fuss with people dying. Death is part of life, and death is our common denominator. At least in my death, I'll still be 3 times the man you could never be while you're alive. So that's the only difference.
Chief, thank you for honoring our invite.
Thank you very much.
Wish you all the best in your endeavors, if I may put it that way, and all the best.
Thank you for making history, and definitely I'm sure we'll have more people on this platform, and I'll definitely keep an eye on who will be next on the show.
We have come to the end of the first edition of On the Spot. Until we meet next time. Bye-bye.